Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
You're listening to the One Pridecast. Hello and welcome to the One Pridecast presented by MGM Grand Detroit. I'm Tori Petry, joined once again this week by Mike O'Hara. Mike, how is your morning going?
Well, my morning's doing well, and I'm looking forward to another little breakfast treat that you've given me the first 2 weeks. I think it was a blueberry muffin, and then a scone. Let me open up the silver-plated. Is this a joke? A cold, hard-boiled egg?
I thought you needed something healthy this time.
Did you get this like at a 2-for-1, and I'm going to get another one next week?
You caught me.
I guarantee you this. You will not catch me speaking with my mouth full. I hate hard-boiled eggs. All right. Should I shut up and we go?
Yeah, I'll get your order right next week. Sorry about that,
All right.
Mike.
Can't believe it.
I know, right? I know.
It's awful.
I know. It's just been a tough week. Tough week all around, which that brings us to talking about this game on Sunday. Mike, you and I were at Ford Field for the Lions game versus the Packers. I mean, it was odd, wasn't it? Just coming into an empty stadium to cover a football game that wasn't happening there?
Yeah, it was different than week one, of course, with the Bears because, look, even without fans in the stands, there's a buzz in the NFL stadium on Sunday. And you sort of just kind of feel that there's some energy, something, there's going to be 60 minutes of really ferocious combat, whatever you want to call it. But when you go there and you know that they're, 400 or 500 miles away in the northern reaches of the state of Wisconsin, and we're watching it on, video boards and TV sets and all that, and we're down maybe 50 yards from Dan Miller doing the play-by-play with Lomas Brown, and you can hear him. It's just different. But once we settled into the game, for me it was just I'm watching a football game, and it really it's that way every Sunday for me. But it really was different.
Well, it was a pretty nice setup though that we had. We had 4 screens, and 3 of them were the game. They were just at different timings and different feeds of the same game. And then we had Red Zone on in the corner. So it was a nice setup.
Yeah, it is. And I think we'll do it this week again for the Detroit Lions at the Arizona Cardinals. I think we might as well move to Arizona because I think the Lions have played them 7 times in the last 8 years. And this will be, I think, the 3rd or 4th straight year at Arizona. I mean, I like that trip. I don't know about you, but I like going to Arizona. And if that and maybe Chicago would be 2 of the trips that we're going to miss this year that I really always enjoyed going to.
Yeah, I know. I feel you. I like the opportunity to get out and do some hiking when we go to Arizona. It's always nice when that one comes later on in the season when it's already cold here and you can't do too much outside. And then, you head out to Arizona and get some hiking in. But because the teams are all quarantined and everything once they get there, even if we were on the road, that wouldn't be a possibility this year. But it is odd how many times the Lions have played the Cardinals. Certainly this year will be a lot different than the matchup that they had last year. But we'll get to that in a little bit. For now, Mike, I want to talk about this game on Sunday between the Lions and the Packers. I mean, the first quarter looked like this team had made a lot of adjustments after their game against the Bears last week. They came out firing, and we thought that, hey, this looks like they've turned some things around, and then things went downhill after that.
Yeah, they really did. And we keep hearing this, and you hear it every year, and probably all 32 teams in the National Football League, how important it is to start fast. We go back to the Chicago game 2 weeks ago now, and they had 2 of their first 4 possessions ended up inside the red zone. And for people out there, the red zone is when you start a series of downs inside the opponent's 20. You're in the red zone. Both times they settled for field goals, couldn't close the deal. And the lament, if only they could have started fast. They would have been able to have had a cushion, and they would have held on to beat the Bears. Well, they started fast. First possession of the game, 75 yards, touchdown run by Kerryon Johnson. Second possession of the game after the Packers answered back with a field goal to make it 7-3. Another 75-yard drive, touchdown pass to Marvin Jones Jr. The Detroit Lions have started fast, and they stopped just as fast. And my point is, and I wrote about this on our What We Learned column on DetroitLions.com, that I'm sure you read in detail, is that start fast. That's great. Play 60 minutes of football. That's better. That's how you win. That's what the Green Bay Packers did. They just kept methodically chopping away. I'm not saying they didn't have any lulls there in the 60 minutes of clock time, but certainly not like the Detroit Lions had, and not the just look. It wasn't a blizzard of penalties. It was 6 or 7 penalties against the Lions, but they were big ones.
Yeah.
Holding penalty that kept the clock going at the end of the first half. Back-to-back personal fouls on Will Harris. What was he doing? You look at that stuff and you go, nobody teaches that. Jamal Agnew calls for a fair catch, steps out of the way and blocks. You don't do that in high school. Now, is that because there were no preseason games? I don't know. Green Bay Packers didn't have any preseason games. They didn't have any off-season program. So you can't blame. You can point to that, but you can't blame any of that. It was just bad football, and I don't think Matt Patricia and his coordinators and his position coaches teach that, but that's what happened on Sunday. So for those of you who say get a fast start against the Cardinals on Sunday in Arizona, yeah, keep it up. Keep your foot on the gas.
Absolutely. Where do you think things turned? What went wrong to fall apart after the first quarter?
Well, the offense stopped moving the ball, and the defense they picked up where they left off basically against the Chicago Bears the previous week, where they gave up 3 touchdown passes on 4 possessions to lose the game, and one of those possessions started near the end of the third quarter, but the touchdown was scored in the fourth quarter. That's a 21-0 blitz on the Chicago Bears, and to Mitchell Trubisky, who's really not considered a top-rated quarterback right now in the National Football League. Now, Tori, I've said this before. I personally think there's too much put on him. I think he's better than average, and he's certainly been good against the Detroit Lions. But I just think they picked up. They didn't stop the run against the Bears. They didn't stop it against the Arizona Cardinals. Nobody stops Aaron Rodgers for very long, and the Lions didn't do that. And he didn't play his best game. He had a 60% completion rate. That's okay. It's not great. He had 2 touchdown passes, but no big mistakes. Outside of it, Matthew Stafford played okay at the start, just sort of okay the rest of the game, but had a big mistake there in the fourth end of the third quarter, fourth quarter. I forget exactly when it was right now. When he threw the ball late, and he threw it inside, ended up an easy interception and a walk-in touchdown for the Packers that really ended any last chance the Detroit Lions had to make a mistake. You don't expect that of Matthew Stafford. He's too good. He's been around too long. Look, he's a top 7 or 8 quarterback in the National Football League. He doesn't play that way, and I don't think he will again.
Looking at the defense, it's tough to find bright spots from what the Lions have done defensively the last couple of weeks. What ails them on defense? What's going wrong?
Well, 2 things. Number one, stopping the run. They didn't do it. They didn't do a good job against the Bears, and they did an even poorer job against the Packers last week. And by the way, while we're at it, those are 2 division rivals. They're 0-2 in the division. They've lost 8 straight in the division now, 6 last year and 2 this year. Those are games you have to win, like we always say they count too. But they didn't stop the run, and that sets up everything. When teams know that they can run, when they've got some good plays, it leads it to play action. And last week they were working on a secondary with basically young players. Jeff Okudah, number 1 first-round draft pick, I should say, for the Detroit Lions out of Ohio State, drafted 3rd overall, failed to live up to billing. And after one game, people in Detroit want to sack him and say, "Oh my God, they took the wrong guy." Folks, we'll see how it turns out, okay? But he certainly did not play well. Will Harris at safety had a game that he would like to forget. Nobody's going to let him. And so it was a double-headed issue for him. Couldn't stop the run, couldn't rush the quarterback. That's 2 straight games now. They've had 1 sack in each of the first 2 games, and no turnovers, none, 0. You're playing when you do that, you're playing at a deficit. That's the way it is. That's the National Football League. Turnovers win games. Sacks win games. Pressures win games.
Why can't they get pressure on the quarterback?
Well, I guess the easy answer is because they can't. But I don't. I don't think they do not have a proven big-time pass rusher. Now, look, Trey Flowers he's really a really good football player. I mean, really good. He's probably, if you rated all the defensive ends who stopped the run and rushed the passer, he'd probably be like in the top, 8 to 10. But he's not, he's not the guy I think you have to absolutely scheme for to stop as a pass rusher. They have not been able yet to develop that. The last one they really had was Ziggy Ansah 3-4 years ago. He had 12 sacks, but he was hurt a lot and, played in spurts. Some of those spurts were really, really good football. They really have not been able to find that guy that teams have to account for. And I'm not exactly sure, that the Detroit Lions are schemed to, all out pressure on the quarterback. They play a lot of man-to-man defense. It puts a lot of pressure on their secondary, but they just don't get to the quarterback.
So if it's a matter of not having that big name pass rusher, what can be done to rectify that as the season goes on? Because obviously rosters are for the most part set at this point in the season. You move around some guys at the bottom of the roster, and IR things change things as well. But what can they do to create more pressure?
Well, sometimes, Tori, teams do make moves during the season. For example, Chandler Jones, outside linebacker for the Arizona Cardinals, was acquired in a midseason trade with, I forget it was the offseason or midseason, but I think it was midseason trade with the New England Patriots in, was it 2016? And he's had, I think, 5 straight years of double-digit sacks. Had 19 last year. The Patriots. The Cardinals have, I think, they're third or fourth, tied for third in the league right now with 7 sacks, and 7 different players each have 1 sack. So no, they haven't turned loose that one guy, including Chandler Jones, but they are getting to the quarterback as a team, as a unit, not one individual leading the charge. But they also, last year at midseason, they acquired in another trade Kenyon Drake, running back. He played 8 games for the Cardinals last year, coming over and had 650 yards rushing. And he's back at it again this year. He's got close to 150 in 2 games. So you can make moves, but you've got to find a team that's trying to dump somebody, which was the case of both Jones and Drake, and be able to match up, what you can do in terms of contracts and compensation to the team that's trying to dump them.
Okay, so you say look for somebody before the trade deadline.
Yeah. Let me add just one thing there. It was just 2 years ago that really one of the sharpest trades that the Lions have made by any regime, in the last several years, was when Bob Quinn made a move with the New York Giants to get Snacks Harrison. And he really played terrific football for a half a season for the Detroit Lions. He really did. He helped elevate that defense, and they played good ball on that side of the ball the last 8 to 9 games. Last year, he wasn't the same player. He was cut after the 2019 season. As I recall, I don't believe he's been signed by anybody. And so, was that a good move? Yes, but it wasn't a long-term move, as it turned out. That was unexpected. They expected him to be a good player for them for a couple of years. He was a good player for him for 8 games.
Mike, we're only 2 games into the season, and if you've spent any time on Twitter, you know that there's a lot of frustration in this fan base considering the losing streak that goes back to last season. What would you say to fans who are feeling frustrated at this point, just 2 games into the season?
Well, the first thing I'd say is don't blame me and Tori.
I like that.
Leave us alone, Look, I've been through this a long time, Tori, and I'm not saying that for any reason other than just this is one point. And I've said this to other players, and just talking to coaches. They all want to separate themselves from the history of the franchise, and I get it. For example, last week in his post-game presser, the head coach Matt Patricia, somebody asked him about the 11-game winning streak. He says, "Well, this is 2020. We look at it as a 2-game losing streak." He's right and he's wrong. It is an 11-game losing streak. It's like this. Whatever franchise you go to in whatever sport, you inherit the legacy and the history of that sport. When you get when you get traded to the New York Yankees, you put on the pinstripe and say, "Wow, this is cool." Or the Montreal Canadiens in hockey, or the Lakers and Celtics, and maybe 1 or 2 other teams in the NBA. You inherit that legacy. You really do. And I don't know if it's quite as pronounced in football because of the turnover in franchises every year. But yes, you inherit the good and you inherit the bad. And that's just the way it is. I don't know if it's fair, but I don't think it's unfair either, because the fans have been there a long time before a player gets there, before a coach gets there, before a new regime gets there. And they'll be here in Detroit a long time after they're gone, and there's another coach and another player and another regime. So what I would say is to Coach Patricia, I get it, but you know what? You've just got to live with it. It's part of the deal. All that speculation goes with it.
Football is back. The 2020 NFL season is kicking off with even more ways to get into the game, thanks to BetMGM, an official partner of the Detroit Lions. This year, Lions fans can play along for free during all the action and win great prizes, including the grand prize each week of an MGM Resorts trip package. Just download the Lions mobile app and register to play Lions Bingo each and every week. Play along during every game, and once you hit bingo, you score. All thanks to BetMGM. Learn more by visiting the official Lions mobile app now.
Well, obviously the Lions want to turn things around. 2 games into the season, a 2-game losing streak, as Coach Patricia said, but you don't want to carry that on into Week 3, and the Lions head into a matchup with an Arizona Cardinals team that has been really cruising on offense. What is the most challenging part of this matchup for the Lions this week?
Well, they've got a good running game, and it's led by the quarterback, Kyler Murray. Look, the Lions saw him last year, and they had, a 17-point lead or 18-point lead in the first minute of the fourth quarter. He led them back to a couple of touchdowns and a 2-point conversion, in the dying seconds of regulation time to send it into overtime. So they've seen him up close and personal. They should, when you face a quarterback like Kyler Murray, the thing you have to adapt to is the speed. They've seen that. There are a lot of guys in this roster who have seen that speed, so that shouldn't fool them. I'm writing one of our scouting columns for DetroitLions.com, and the one thing I looked at is, look, he's got 163 or 158 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. And if you get a chance, go online and just Google Kyler Murray 21-yard run versus Washington football team, untouched. He just weaved through it like, he looked like a figure skater. The only thing he didn't do was the full axle and all that. Tori, it was a thing of just athletic beauty. It really was. It's just amazing. You couldn't touch him. Well, you know what? Don't let it happen. Build a wall around him. And the other side of it is, look, after 2 games, he's got 2 touchdown passes and he's got 2 interceptions. He's not ripping anybody apart with his arm. He really isn't. Like last year, he had 20 touchdown passes, 17 interceptions. That's a good season for a rookie. But the bottom line is they were 5-10 with 1 tie. I don't think Kyler Murray right now, the way they're set up, is going to consistently beat teams with his arm. So if you're the Detroit Lions, build a wall around him. He's 5'9" or whatever. Get your hands up if you can't get to him. Make him negotiate the passing lanes, and you've got a chance to win this game. Get some tip balls, get some turnovers, and you've got to play him differently because of the speed. So do it. Play to his weakness, which to me right now, that entire offense is throwing the ball. Now they've got good players. Don't get me wrong. But like Larry Fitzgerald, who's almost my age and still playing, good football, and DeAndre Hopkins, who leads the league now, they got him in a trade. I think it was in March. They got him in a trade. He leads the league with 22 receptions. But make them work for that. Just don't let him beat you with his legs.
Well, that's fair. I definitely think they need to make sure that they contain Kyler Murray on the ground. But you look at the passing game, and last week Jeff Okudah had to face off against Devontae Adams along with Amani Oruwariye, and this week they've got Larry Fitzgerald and DeAndre Hopkins. So this is yet another challenge of really good receivers, although, like you said, the strength of Arizona's offense is the mobility of their quarterback.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, good points by you, and so play to that, and look, is it easy? No, it isn't easy. None of it is easy. But take advantage of what you have in front of you, and then what you can do too. And another part of it is sustain drives on offense. Keep the ball out of his hands. I mean, look, the Green Bay Packers in their opening game against the Minnesota Vikings held the ball for 41 minutes and some seconds. How are the Vikings ever going to win if they can't get the ball and play and keep away with it? And the Detroit Lions do the same thing. One thing that's sort of presented itself, in my opinion, in the first 2 games is that they haven't had high volume of running, but when they've run the ball, they've run it well. And they've averaged 4.2 or something yards in one game and over 4 in the other game. That's the first time since 2016 that the Lions have averaged more than 4 yards per carry in their first 2 yards. My point being, and I think it's the addition of Adrian Peterson, is that they have legitimate running threats now. And, they got, Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Swift behind Peterson, but they've got, 3 guys there with varied skills. and I think take advantage of that. I think you can do some things against the Cardinals defense.
The running back by committee approach has seemed to be working for the team. Obviously, they
Yep.
haven't been winning games, but we've been seeing production in the run game. And what I liked this last week to find a positive was that drive from Kerryon Johnson where he scored the touchdown there at the end, 25-yard run from Adrian Peterson. And then we saw DeAndre Swift get some catches in his back pocket after the struggles in week 1. And I liked them getting him more involved and getting him some touches after that tough moment to end the first week's game. He had 5 catches for 60 yards, so I liked that.
Yeah, 5 catches and five targets too. He caught everything. I think also a player that we ought to mention right now is last year's first-round draft pick, T.J. Hockenson. He's had 9 targets, 9 catches, more than 100 yards. He's really averaging, double digits per catch. I think this is really a good football player, and if you can get in there where you can start dictating, get into play action stuff like that, I think that you're looking at the next young tight end in the National Football League who's going to, steadily grow. And I don't think this is just a fluke, but I think you're going to see him, 65, 70 catches this year, and then be one of those, Greg Olsen type of players who gets, he's your reliable, if he's not your first option behind, say, like Kenny Galladay, he's like your 1.5 or 2, or 1B or number 2 because of what he can do, work the middle of the field. And one thing about him, there's a lot of things about him I like. It's his hands, his size, and how he likes to play the game. But he can catch the ball, turn and get upfield with just absolute ease. He doesn't have to readjust himself or, take a step and get his balance. He just does it all in such fluid motion that he's able to get his body even with the defender and accelerate away and get extra yards. And I think this would be a good week to use that. But any week's a good week to use it. But I think we're seeing really a young player develop before our eyes into a really good football player.
TJ Hockenson has definitely been a bright spot for this team, and he had quite the game against the Cardinals last year, so maybe we see that again this week.
Yeah, what do you have, 130 yards receiving and a touchdown, and I think he was the Rookie of the Week or something like that. Well, you know what? Keep it up. Build on it.
Absolutely. I mean, this team struggled last year against the Arizona Cardinals. It was that game that ended in the tie to open the season. Definitely a disappointing one for Lions fans. But I'm curious what you think about this. How much has that Cardinals team changed since the Lions saw them in Week 1 last year?
Well, they used the draft, and they haven't got much out of their first-round draft. Simmons out of Clemson only played 7 snaps last week, and basically, from what I read, he looked like he was lost in the opener. But look, that happens to young players, even when they've got a full off-season program and a full training camp. But really, I think you've got to block them up front. I don't think that's, like we talked before, I don't think that's any secret. I mean, look, Chandler Jones, he can come out smoking at any time. You never know. He could have a big game. The Lions have had some injuries up front on the offensive line. Here in the middle of the week, we have to see how some of that stuff shakes out. I do really think one thing, Tori, should not underestimate the loss of left guard Joe Dahl. I think he's been one of the most improved players on that team over the, in the what is now the 5th year he's been there. He drafted as an offensive tackle, moved to guard, and just steadily gotten better and better and better. He's really, I think, now a genuine NFL starter at guard. And whoever plays in there, you've got to adjust, you've got to adapt, and you've got to step up and play better. Like Ode Abushi played that spot last week and did okay, but also got one of the big penalties in the game too that ended up costing the Lions, cost them 7 points there at the end of the first half. But all of that stuff is, I think you got to play with some poise, play with some precision, and just don't make. You're going to make mistakes because you're going to, these are great athletes on the other side of the line of scrimmage too. But got to minimize them and don't give anything away. It's hard enough just when you're playing them even, but don't give anything away.
Even with the injuries on the offensive line, though, there have been some positives on the OL. I mean, I've liked Jonah Jackson a lot. I've liked what we've seen from the rookie at the right guard spot. Frank Ragnall's playing well again, and so is Taylor Decker.
Yeah, that's 3. Yeah, that's 3 of the 5. But anytime you have one breakdown, if you have a weak link on the offensive line, they're going to just pound you. They really are, and so they all have to step it up. Whoever plays those spots, till they get all the starters back. But you're right about your comments on those 3 guys. I think Frank Ragnow is the next all-pro center in the National Football League. Now, he's not going to get that recognition if the Lions keep, to go, get off the starts like they've got. And if they have another one of those seasons where they're 3 and whatever, or 4 or 5 and whatever. But on his own, regardless of whether the team's winning or losing, he's really become a young leader and a really, really good football player. And Taylor Decker, honestly, he looks just like an absolute, the Great Wall of Decker there at left tackle. You can't get around him.
I like it.
He's really been a good player for him. He struggled a little bit after he, had that injury in his second season, in the off season. But man, he's back and he looks really, really good to me.
Well, Mike, it's time now for Mike's Pick of the Week, presented by MGM Grand Detroit. I want to get your take. Who's going to win this Sunday in Arizona?
Well, I think I said this last year. I know it was going to be a close game with the Packers, and it turned out I was right for 15 minutes, which is a career high, by the way. If I could be right for 15 minutes on the tables at MGM Grand, you would never hear from me again. And you're hoping I am, right? No, I think it's a tight game, and I really do. I like that. Look, I look at the Cardinals, and look, they're 2-0, but they're one of 11 teams in the National Football League that are 2-0. The Detroit Lions are one of a bunch that are 0-2, but it's early. But I think there's a sense of urgency now in the Detroit Lions that I think if the opener was a disappointment, then week 2 was a wake-up call. Like, guys, get over it, get over yourselves, get out there and play some football. They didn't make all those changes in the offseason, bringing guys like Jamie Collins and Harmon and so on to play the way they played as a group. I'm not just singling out anybody, but as a group, the way they did against the Green Bay Packers. So I see a better team, but I also see a very, very close win for the Arizona Cardinals, 23-20 Arizona.
Oh, I thought for a second there you were going to go Lions.
Well, I'm just trying to influence the betting line. I'm going to bet the other way. No, but I see it a tight game, 23-20. Now, I don't know about Kenny Galladay's status here on Wednesday morning, but if he plays, it certainly opens up a lot of things. It gives them a downfield receiver who can overpower defensive backs. He plays like a power forward in the National Basketball Association. He gets out there and doesn't beat him with speed, but he beats him with body control, strong hands, and ability to jump and catch the ball at the high point. So don't be surprised if the Lions win this game, but I just can't pick them to win until they do it. They haven't done it, and they haven't done it yet.
All right. I feel you, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week. We appreciate it, and we'll chat with you next week.
Not over a hard-boiled egg. I'm sure you've got to do better.
All right. I'll fix it for next week.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you guys for tuning in to the One Pridecast presented by MGM Grand Detroit. We'll see you next week.
Football is back. The 2020 NFL season is kicking off with even more ways to get into the game, thanks to BetMGM, an official partner of the Detroit Lions. This year, Lions fans can play along for free during all the action and win great prizes, including the grand prize each week of an MGM Resorts trip package. Just download the Lions mobile app and register to play Lions Bingo each and every week. Play along during every game, and once you hit bingo, you score. All thanks to BetMGM. Learn more by visiting the official Lions mobile app now.